Chair of APEC 2015, President Aquino, Your Majesty, Your Excellencies. The world we know has profoundly changed since the establishment of APEC 25 years ago. Much has been achieved, but global megatrends are changing the landscape and are creating new challenges for economies, business, and society as a whole. Based on studies by PwC, these megatrends permeate all sectors of the economy. Consumer demands are rapidly changing, compelling everyone to review business models and delivery systems. The first is demographics and social change, with the global population hitting 8 billion by 2025. At the same time, some societies have aging populations, with the fastest growing segment at over 65 years old. We already feel the shortages of labor in our businesses, and we expect a war on talent, needing more women in the workforce and better cross-border mobility of people. The world will increasingly be characterized by diversity, contributing to richer exchanges in ideas. Yet, there will be challenges in assimilation and social cohesion. APEC needs to implement bold policies and collaborate more as our interests become truly regional. The second is the unprecedented rise in urbanization. 50% of the world's population live in cities, which cover 0.5% of the world's land, yet consume 75% of the world's resources. People used to be attracted to cities for employment. Today, they are attracted by the quality of life cities offer, putting tremendous pressure on infrastructure, the environment, and the social fabric of the city. The third is the shifts in global economic power. This year, Asia-Pacific will have a larger middle class than Europe and North America combined. Emerging markets are moving up the value chain and competing with the developed economies. The fourth megatrend is climate change and resource scarcity, with the population growing and middle class rising, consuming resources beyond our planet's capacity to cope. Sustainability is no longer a choice, but an imperative. We must urgently work together to transition to and attract investment in sustainable development. Lastly, technology has the greatest impact on our lives. With costs of technology falling and speed of adaptation rising dramatically, technology has significantly disrupted the way we live, communicate, and work. Consumer demand for anytime, anywhere access to information is disrupting and transforming businesses, products, and services. Today, both business and government need to develop a comprehensive and consistent strategy to take advantage of the digital age. Excellencies, the global megatrends are bringing new risks and opportunities. More than ever, we need to come together for collective action towards greater regional economic integration to achieve our shared vision of a secure, stable, and prosperous region for everyone through inclusive, quality, and sustainable growth. We applaud the recent conclusion of the TPP, call for the completion of the RCEP, and are encouraged by the progress of the Pacific Alliance as important pathways to the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific, which ABAC first proposed 10 years ago. The FTAAP is the most practical vehicle to achieve the sustainable and inclusive environment that our leaders envisioned when they created APEC in 1989. ABAC has commissioned a study that will identify next-generation business and investment issues so that the FTAAP becomes responsive to the needs of businesses, big and small. We urge APEC economies to continue their commitment to the WTO and to exert leadership through the early implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement by the 10th WTO Ministerial Conference in December. Excellencies, allow me to highlight some key recommendations. The future of a sustainable Asia-Pacific needs to be inclusive, with a broader sector of society participating to create a more stable economic region. Greater focus must be put on the services sector, the single biggest contributor to employment and output. Most of the barriers to services trade are structural in nature and will require an ambitious policy and regulatory reform. ABAC this year worked to establish the Asia-Pacific Coalition of Services Organizations to help APEC deliver on the principles embodied in the APEC Services Cooperation Framework. Excellencies, we have an 84-page report to leaders with all our recommendations. These include the development of APEC's financial systems for resilient financial markets, practical measures for infrastructure development, including disaster-resilient infrastructure in the face of the new normal, the development of a new approach to the management of cross-border labor flows, which will allow the circular flow of workers through the earn, learn, and return, actions to promote trade and investments in food and agriculture, and the elimination of food waste. ABAC established the Asia-Pacific Food Industry Forum to support policy work in food security. A call for governments to proactively invest in healthy, productive workforces. Use of metrics to guide city officials in building sustainable and livable cities. Actions to promote green growth, eliminating non-tariff barriers to environmental goods and services, and delivering renewable energy commitments. And strengthening the rule of law to provide an environment of legal certainty and to improve on areas where public policy is hindering trade and investment. Excellencies, these same global megatrends offer the greatest opportunities for SMEs. We must promote inclusive business models. ABAC study with the Asian Institute of Management shows the impact of value-driven partnerships when SMEs form critical parts of global value chains. We must create the environment for SMEs to internationalize through e-commerce. A joint study by ABAC and the USC Marshall School found that SMEs across APEC face many challenges. We need an APEC-wide e-commerce policy framework and strategies. The greatest driver of economic growth is innovation. Unconstrained by large fixed assets, SMEs are better positioned to understand new customer expectations and create transformational business models through innovation. Unlocking the remarkable potential of entrepreneurs needs robust innovation ecosystems. Economies must commit to developing their respective innovation and digital action plans. 50 years ago, the life expectancy of Fortune 500 companies was 75 years. Today, it is less than 15 years. Clearly, an APEC-wide plan is also needed, or we will be left out of future growth. To kick off our work in this area, ABAC, together with the Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada, is launching an interactive mapping of incubators to allow startups to network and VCs to find startups to support. Excellencies, if we are to deliver the promise of inclusive growth, innovation, fairness, and cooperation must continue to inspire our work. There is much to be done. ABAC calls for immediate action, which include adopt policies to promote trade and services growth, ratify the TFA, and commence steps on rapid implementation of your respective TFA commitments, accelerate investment in resilient infrastructure, and increase private sector participation in key infrastructure delivery, commission the development of an APEC Innovation and Digital Action Plan in cooperation with ABAC. We are offering to serve not just as a resource for knowledge sharing, but as partners in developing policies and actions that will usher in an age of inclusive prosperity for the region's people. Thank you.